Welcome to the Celtic Exchange Weekly. This is Tino, and this week I'm joined by James, Paddy and Miff as we once again cover all things Celtic. Miff, 2 wins from 2, 6 goals scored, none conceded. We've got 1 striker, 1 left back, and absolutely nothing to report on the transfer front. What are you saying?
Hello Tino, hello Paddy, hello James, hello listeners. What am I saying? Strong intro, by the way. I would suggest that the lack of activity is overshadowing what's been an excellent start to the season. There will be those in the camp who, just look at what's happening on the pitch and be delighted at that and move on and be going to work happy and Monday morning and think this is great. Sun's shining, everything's fantastic. Fair play, if you live your life in that way. There are others among us who are delighted at the way the team's functioning, but actually that is causing part of the frustration, because you can see how close we are with a couple of additions to being a pretty strong, slick team. But we are only 2 departures or 2 injuries away from being on a knife edge of being embroiled in probably yet another sticky title race again. I think that's what's at stake here. So delighted at the current form of the team, delighted at how unified the squad appears to be as well. But I think, as we're going to discuss, you only need to see a couple of incidents in the game which would suggest to us that we're hanging by a thread in terms of the depth of the squad.
Paddy, I think it's so accurate, and it kind of beats me at the punch in terms of my next question. I was going to say, despite the really strong start to the campaign, we really are just a couple of injuries and a Matt O'Reilly sale away from being pretty average again.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just a Matt O'Reilly sale. We don't know what's going to happen from now into the remainder of the window. We still don't know who's going to come in. We still don't know who's going to go. I think we should have a clearer picture by now, personally. I've got this image of Brendan Rodgers with his face put onto the wee dog. See that dog that's sitting with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in the house fire, saying this is fine. That's the image of Brendan Rodgers at the moment, because I want to know what's going through his head. What is he thinking? And it's only going to get harder for him, and he's only going to get more frustrated as the Scottish media decide to really, really ramp it up against us. But actually, questions do need to be answered. Do they need to be answered by our manager? Absolutely not. Mm. And that's the grey area for Celtic fans. Yes, it's been a really, really good start, as Miff said, and it's been some good football, and I would include yesterday in that as well. But yeah, we're getting worried now, big time.
James, you'd have to say, as Paddy leans towards, the manager's doing his bit, but it seems that those above him or in support of him at the club, at least at this moment in time, and there's 18 days to go now, they've yet to fulfil their part of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I was nice and panicky nice and early, and now I'm strangely more relaxed, because they're not going to do their business early. They've shown that, so they must have a plan to do it late. The way you talk about it, saying, he's got to move there, and he's got to move there, and blah blah blah, like one of those wee kind of number puzzles where that slides over there and then it all comes together in the end.
Hold on a minute. The youth will have no idea. Now, James and I used to get thrown them in the back of the car when we were kids. Go and play with that wee slider tool thing, and that'll keep you going for a couple of hours. The young team won't get. Do we have young listeners? If we do, they're not getting it.
I've got a gif of it. I'll post it on the Twitter.
Paddy will post his meme. You post your gif
on the Twitter.
We'll crack on.
So you know what? That I've been kind of wanting it done early. It's not going to happen. So are we going to delay? The annoying thing is, from your point, saying we're 2-3 players away from being a bit threadbare, a bit of a disaster. I agree with that. But we're also 2 or 3 players away from being a great team, like a genuinely great. I think we've got 8 first team players and 2 or 3 that could be doing at least a challenge, if not replaced. And then everything lifts up, a notch in the squad, and you've then got a squad that can compete in Europe. So it's not like we need 10 players, any overhaul. 2 or 3 players. I think probably 4 or 5 would be my desire, but they've battered me down to 2 or 3.
No, I know we don't want to just focus purely on negativity in transfer, but I went to the bother of asking the troops in the group chat.
Are these guys that can be trusted to give a sensible opinion?
Absolutely not.
A few of them.
Aye, of course.
A few not. But if we signed Ida, what would you accept as a bare minimum after that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What would it just be, a left back? See you sign Ida and a left back. Are you happy with that?
No.
90% want another on top of Ida, another 4 signings.
4. My balance would be if I could get Ida and a left back and a left centre half, I would accept it. Like every football fan, you're greedy, aren't you? You want the 4 and 5. If I can get the 2 to 3, I'd be happy.
Surely though, we're not waiting to sell O'Reilly before what you mentioned about the puzzle element where
unlocks
an
everything.
outgoing then goes bang bang bang. Surely we aren't doing that.
No, because we know there's money on the table for Riley if we want it, albeit not to our valuation, but close to
Very
it.
close.
That would allow you to go and do your signing work.
Yep.
So I don't think that's the blocker. I just think we're not managing to nail our targets.
I think in the absence of any real info, we're all just guessing. Well, maybe they're waiting for O'Reilly and maybe that changes that and who knows what'll happen with him.
And so that this is the curious thing for me. That brings me back to the point. There's 2 things. One, Rodgers has been the front man for this. But he's basically been hung out to dry, in my opinion, by the board because he's getting sent out and he's answering all these questions. And I know part of the sort of soundbite that he came out with is, I'm just concentrating on the players that I have, which is that whole, that's all I can do, control the controllables thing. But if chat is to be believed, Rodgers is probably taking more to do with what's coming in, and there's almost a quality control element to Rodgers.
Essentially,
Rodgers
it has to be after last
role
summer.
in it, right? So, by virtue of that fact, is that possibly the reason why there's practically nothing coming out in terms of
I believe
links?
so.
Is that the kind of glimmer of hope that we're latching onto?
Or it could be that everything he's getting served up, he's saying no.
That's
because
what
I think it's pretty fragile. I really do. I think that I definitely agree. I think Rodgers is at the front of it, but he will know the calibre of player he wants, right?
Yeah.
We look at that January window. He got 2 players in it he wanted. Well, we don't know so much about the Kuhn thing, but definitely he got Adam Ida, who said, yep, he's the guy for me. We've signed Kasper Schmeichel after 20 weeks. Well, we're not going into that again. But that
was so last week.
That
Paddy.
hurt me, man, a big time. But what I'm saying about this is that is everything he's getting served up, is he basically saying, aye, but no? Is it not? It's still not at the level that I require to take this club forward. He made a bold statement when he came back last year, and it was, I want to progress this team in Europe. And there's no signs of it yet.
And he's saying it again now. He's repeated it over the last couple of weeks, and what he has stressed is the club know the targets I want, and now hopefully we can get these guys in over the next 3 weeks. And he's been repeating the same things over the last couple of weeks because there's only so much he can say about it.
Yeah.
There's only so many ways to answer the same question. But what do you think, Paddy, about unless he's behaving one way for the cameras and completely different behind the scenes, I think he genuinely does seem pretty relaxed. That's my amateur reading of it in terms of the body language and the words and all that stuff. Do you think there's maybe some different stuff going on that we're not seeing?
I think it's hard to call. I just think that, listen, we look at the first term under Brendan Rodgers. He delivered success for us, and we thought he was the man going to take us to 10 in a row. But ultimately, we hit a wall at one point, and we look at that January window before he left. He wasn't happy with it.
That was a Shved window, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Shved window, the Oliver Butt window, the Toljan window, Timo Weah, like just
Before he was ready, no, the Timo Weah that's playing with Juventus.
Aye, which is at right back.
Is it?
Some games, aye.
Right wing back.
Aye. For me, like the way he left first time round hurt a lot of people. But I think now a lot of people are waking up to what he's actually working with. And, it seems like a very, very difficult setup. We spoke about things last week about the board. It seems as if, yeah, we can look at that when you come in the door, but actually we can look at it and not act on it. Seems to be the case at this moment in time. He never got the players that he wanted in the summer last year because a lot of those transfers were already in motion. And I think this year, I don't know what the stumbling block is, and that's the bit that hurts the most.
Paddy, now seems quite a good time to come to Miff to discuss what I would call hypocrisy. I think's the word. What's the difference, Miff? We were chatting before coming on here. If Brendan Rodgers doesn't get backed at the moment, I know you're waiting. I can see the wee finger.
I was going to make a point there, but no, I can't remember. But it's because I know what's coming.
I'll come back to you. If Rodgers leaves in the next couple of weeks, having not been backed suitably, you think that's justifiable and he might be well within his rights to walk?
Yes.
What's the difference between that and when he walked previously at a time when it looked like he also wasn't being backed and he was getting fed things like Marian Shved and loan signings and nonsense? What's the difference? Is it a timing thing? Is it something else?
Yep.
Timing?
10 in a row.
Nah.
He left a team that was comfortably ahead in the league table, 8 points clear, I think. and we're not to seal the treble again that year. Like
again, that's a subjective thing, you know. If
But
you're
should he
comfortable with that,
should he sell himself short and just sit on tight because there's 10 in a row, or should he do the right thing by his own standards and say,
potentially not.
I'm not staying here for this, I need to watch?
Potentially not, but why come back?
Maybe he was given these assurances.
Yeah, and this is where it sits with me as well. Listen, as much as every Celtic fan would have loved to have won 10 in a row, you've kind of got to look at it as, is that the be all and end all of being a Celtic supporter? No, it's not.
I'm not. No, but what subsequently happened was amazing for the club, because we get 2 years at Ange, which was probably as good a time as I've had supporting Celtic. So it's not like I'm still sitting here, you know, going, oh, but that's just me personally. I'll just never take to him again because of that. But it doesn't mean I don't support the club. I don't need to be a Celtic fan and like Brendan Rodgers.
That's absolutely fair, I get that. And I was being a wee bit flippant with the hypocrisy and stuff, but have you softened somewhat, or have you still got the same stance?
Absolutely, because now what I can see is a product of a year's hard work, genuine progress in terms of playing style, a very rough period where he dug in fairness to him, and really worked with the players that he had. But what worries me is, why is he not being backed? Are the board just absolute, you know, are they just absolutely point blank refusing to back him, and they want to stockpile cash? Are we getting built up for a sale? Have they got doubts about Rodgers' long-term prospects, sustaining the job? All these different things are all meshed together. Why is that a thing that keeps following him about? I'm not saying it's necessarily Rodgers' fault, by the way. I'm just saying it's happened to him at a couple other clubs as well. Is he just really, really unlucky? Because the evidence would seem to suggest he's a very good coach.
I think the answer to all of these questions, or many of these questions, will only become clear in 18 days' time. At the moment, we're saying, why has he not been backed? He's not been supported. That might change tomorrow.
Yeah.
Probably not, but it might.
No, but this is the thing, right? So, very easily, we could wake up tomorrow, Arayo's gone. Played his last game for Celtic, he's away for 25 million. We've got the 25 million. The domino effect of that could be a centre-half, a left-back, a striker. And we're all sitting here going, oh, that's all right.
But do you think...
My point is, we have known for quite some time we need these positions filled, and we have the money regardless of the Arayo sale. I don't think we're under any sort of scrutiny for financial fair play, because we don't spend money compared to the amount of money that we bring in. We are making a lot of money. Our wage bill is probably, you know, reasonable for the amount of money that we bring in. So why not take action? It's so like Celtic to wait and wait and wait. We know the things need done. Just be proactive and go and do them.
You're saying about, obviously, Rodgers, that's kind of followed him about with a couple of clubs. Mitigating circumstances with Leicester, in my opinion, in terms of like they had a lot of a bit of a power struggle for their ownership after what had happened to their owner. But the big thing for me with, it's not just Rodgers that's experiencing this like almost penny pinching kind of mindset that Celtic have put in place. I think you look at Martin O'Neill's first term, I said this last week, came to an end because Lowell said, no, listen, that the spending needs to slow down, because we're not going to be bringing the same money in, and we don't have the idea that we're going to qualify for Europe, the Champions League each year. We've seen it with Ronnie Dyler. We've seen it with Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill got to a point where he was probably told, do you know what, we need to rein it in now. Gordon Strachan, to an extent, Gordon Strachan was very shrewd in the transfer market, because he had to bring the wage bill down as well. I just think we're going back to that DNA of Lawwell and what he's brought into this club. I do think that that's a massive factor in how we operate. We made a massive error losing that 10th title in a row, and the state of the club at the end of that season. They had to do something. Especially with fans coming back into the stadium. And Ange Postecoglou was effectively single-handedly masterminded the full thing. And then it went back to what we're seeing again. We've seen the appointments of, what's the name of the one of the main guys for transfers. He came in, and it was those windows that he took over from Ange Postecoglou.
Nick Hammond?
I think it was Hammond. But basically, it was just
two of them. Lee Congerton.
Congerton was Rodgers.
Congerton was Rodgers, aye. But I just think we went back to, listen, I'll listen to who you want, Ange, but I'll run it past the board first. I think Rodgers has probably been promised, yeah, listen, we're going to listen to you here, we're going to push ahead for you. However, we'll provide the scouting, we'll provide a list of players for you each window, and it's not working.
And at time of recording, no head of recruitment. That remains the case, and that's obviously a concern.
So
that should have been the first one.
Yeah.
It's the same old thing. It's infrastructure. It's having the right people in place to do the job at hand, and really, actually, we're hearing people even crying out the fact that Ida could be an £8 million player, and then at the same time we're getting annoyed when teams are coming in and bidding £14-15 million for Matt O'Reilly. I do think we need to get real with modern day football as well.
I think the circumstances are different. Matt O'Reilly was playing and being played in a first team. Norwich were benching Ida to the second string.
But then
he's totally different.
I see where you're coming from, but I think what we need to also think about as well is how important Adam Ida was for us, how young he is, what he could possibly go on to do. And I think that we need to get a wee bit real in terms of the transfer window. I think we need to realise that, we're not in the window of signing £4-5-6 million pound players. If we want quality, we are going to have to spend that a bit more, because we'll recoup it as well.
I would also say, just on that point around perceived value and filling positions that you need, I think the Majowski move to Girona,
great numbers,
great for Scottish football.
But I sit back and I go, he's been on your doorstep. You can see the lad, he's a player. I don't think you need to scout him, do you?
No.
Just watch him for 90 minutes playing a game of football. He's sustained a fairly decent level of performance in a rank rotten Aberdeen team, and has won a move away to a team that were challenging in La Liga,
Champions League next season.
So I'm thinking to myself, lads, that's a very obvious one for me.
If he's good enough to go to the City group, Girona's part of the City group, and they're in the Champions League, it feels like an opportunity lost. And I suppose I'd like to think somebody at Celtic's considered Majowski, looked at his assets and thought, not for us, but you just wouldn't know.
My thinking on Majowski, sorry to interrupt you, I think he's probably said, I want to be number one striker. And
maybe he wants to go back into the continent as well, which is fine.
There's loads of different things as to why it might not happen. Plus, Ida, for us, there's no jeopardy there with Ida. He's been in the group, settled, done well. Rodgers has worked with him, which is a big thing for Rodgers. He's worked with him and thinks, right, this is what I need.
More to come.
You saw the difference in our style of play even last season in games that Ida started, where we could chuck the ball up a wee bit quicker and things like that. So I think probably that's played a part, and there's no way Majowski's got to come and be number 3 striker. No. Neither's Ida, neither's Kyogo. So I don't know. I just felt maybe he was somebody based in profile we could really have been done with, because he's a international class striker in my opinion.
It's the same numbers as Adam Ida, give or take. So it's 6.8 million that deal could be worth, which is, I think, it's really impressive by Aberdeen, and they're well within their rights to sit
held on to their guns. Yeah.
There was someone on Twitter earlier on saying Celtic were right not to pay that, because that just sets a precedent where every other Scottish club would hold out for the max return. That's the job of every club in football. See, if you're the selling club, you hold out for the max you can get, and if you're the buying club, you try and get as cost effectively as you can. That's just life and how it works. But I totally agree with your sentiment, Paddy, that Celtic need to get a bit more real about how modern transfers work. I just want to touch on one thing before we move on from this section, and we'll continue with some transfer speculation, mostly made up for the next section. But there's been a few comments, I'm sure you lads maybe seen them across social media. I've seen them across our YouTube and some other platforms, whereas some fans, you may have seen James Forrest, the blogger, not James Forrest, the winger, who got an article pulled last week. Not going to get into too much in case we trip ourselves up here, but it seemed that James brought an article out on the Celtic blog, that's his page, going in heavy, particularly on Peter Lawwell and some different things behind the scenes at Celtic. And next thing you know, it was pulled. And I think there was maybe a suggestion that he was a wee tap in the shoulder, that kind of thing. Since then, we've had some comments in the back of, we've done 3 episodes in the last week between the weekly show and the pre and post match for Hibs. And there's been certain folks at different times saying, what's the story with all yous podcasters no calling as it is? Are you too comfy with your wee relationships with the clubs? Are you getting told what to say and all that?
Right.
I mean,
did they listen to it?
I saw that in Kerry Deal Street, like calling you out specifically as a board of like really meaning a board
to be fair, if the
apologist,
shoe fits, James, I don't mind that. But we had a relatively heated debate last week.
So you can get access to press conferences.
Aye. So we had a relatively heated debate last week for you two lads in particular, and for those who are listening, Miff and Paddy were pretty strong against me. Pretty strong in terms of their feelings on Peter Lawwell's influence and what he's bringing to the party, and not too pleased by it. I was trying, not just playing devil's advocate as the host here, but I was just trying to find the counterbalance to the argument. But under no circumstances are Celtic or anyone telling us what to say, and I can only say so much for other podcasters. We know some better than others. I don't believe anyone in Celtic podcast world has been told what to do, and I think it's a pretty naive and a wee bit offensive to suggest that that Celtic are pulling the strings so that we can continue to enjoy our quote unquote benefits. Show me the benefits, because I'm not seeing any. Of course, we get to the press conference and different things like that. That's it. There's nothing else to it, and we want that to be a smooth relationship with Celtic, but we will always call Celtic out where we feel it's warranted. And as I say, you two lads were pretty strong on that last week, and rightly so. We would encourage that at any given time if that's how you genuinely feel. Yeah.
And if they are listening, I'll take a free trackie.
I will take the whole kit with Kyogo 8 on the back.
Oh, right.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Nice.
So that ends that section, sponsored by Peter Law.
We'll move on. We were going to cover bits and bobs of the Hibs game, but that's moved on. Obviously a good win, 2-0 win at Easter Road, good at any time. Before yesterday's game, I think Celtic had won 6 out of their last 17 games at Easter Road, so the record there hasn't been great. I've seen that on Hamish's channel on Celtic AM, but you can't argue Celtic were pretty comfortable, even though there was some chances we should have buried later on in the game. We've done the final whistle show. I done that yesterday with Joe, so you can hear that now and all other episodes at thecelticexchange.com. If you want to support the Celtic Exchange across the new season, then you can do so right now at thecelticexchange.supercast.com. Once you're there, you can sign up for ad-free listening and help us to bring you even more podcasts, more Celtic, and most importantly, more Miff.
What do you call a Scottish guy that's half in the house and half out the house? Hamish?
Absolutely.
Love it.
You must have known that one.
I was thinking about the one about the guy with a leading a collar.
Bring this in here, this could go.
We've been sidetracked.
Sorry, Pierre Law's phoning me.
I'll continue with my spiel. More podcasts, more Celtic, more Miff throughout the season. As regular listeners will know, in addition to the weekly show, we also provide pre- and post-match episodes for every Celtic game, plus a variety of special episodes with ex-players, coaches, journalists, Celtic authors, and much, much more. You'll find the links to support us in the show notes, or jump to thecelticexchange.supercast.com now. Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, Miff, we'll take a look at various guys that Celtic might sign, but probably won't. Welcome back, folks. If we can't bring you confirmation of any completed signings, what we can do is bring you speculation and unfounded rumours to keep us all ticking along for the time being. There's a few stories doing the rounds at the moment. I don't know if there's anything to them, but we'll cut through them and we'll see what you guys think. The one that interests me is the suggestion that either Ben Doak or Bobby Clark, who sounds a bit like a darts player rather than a football player, may be available on loan. First of all, I'll come to you, Paddy. What do you think, or what do you know about them as talent? And obviously we know Ben Doak better than Bobby Clark, but what about the suggestion that it could only ever be a loan with no option to buy with players at that level? Again,
I just don't see how that aids what we're trying to do. We've spoke a lot on this show about getting players in, getting them settled, and maybe even try to get a third season out of them, because that's probably where you're going to maximise their talent as much as possible. Having a player in for one season, I just think really upsets the harmony. And I think we think back to Paddy Roberts. It was will he, won't he, in terms of signing him, and we never got him in the end. And like Scott Sinclair was then starting to kind of not play the way that we expected from him as well. And I just think I don't want us to see his chopping and changing. I want a settled team for as long as we possibly can. So no, it doesn't work for me.
With any of these guys, Miff, it'll be won't he. There's no suggestion they'll stay, so you get them for one season at a push.
Doak is slightly different to Clark from what I believe and what I've read. I've not seen any link with Doak to Celtic, just that Doak was available, and that if the right bid was there, they would consider selling him. I don't know if that's a reaction to Klopp leaving, because Klopp seemed to be the man that was pretty instrumental in getting him there in the first place, when to everybody's eyes clearly what was better for him was to be bled into the Celtic squad and play first team football on a regular basis, or a more regular basis. So I think it's quite strange that now Klopp's left the building and all of a sudden Doak seems to be available for a transfer. If the move was right, I think was the quotation that was in the BBC website that I read that. So that's odd. I've not seen anything about Clark personally. I'm actually just really intrigued as to what these rumours are, because I've seen nothing.
Aye.
Read about them today. Now reading about them and them being true in any way, shape or form.
No, I'm perfectly happy if you've made them up.
Somebody's got it.
I've definitely know, but whatever you think. I mean, Bobby Clark, the suggestion is, James, he's a £12 million player. I was having a wee debate with Danny McGee that we know well, and good friend of the show, and Danny was dead against, particularly Ben Doak coming back on loan, because of the optics of it all. He's a guy who came through the academy at Celtic, and then when he was on the verge of making a proper breakthrough, headed off to pastures new. Now, I don't think you can fault Ben Doak at all for making such a move. He very probably quadrupled his wages or something like that. You know, he certainly made a decent jump in his salary by going there. And also, I think, as Miff says, Jurgen Klopp got involved in that deal and convinced him to come down there. He featured in the youth teams very briefly, and Klopp then included him quite quickly in first team action. New managers come in. Arne Slot's now the Liverpool gaffer, and that's how football goes sometimes. Different managers, different opinions. I would be pretty pleased if Ben Doak came in and just shone for a year. You know, brought his talents, competed on the big stage, particularly Champions League for Celtic, and gave us a good year. I think you can see. So the Paddy Roberts was always a maybe, but other guys came in like Robbie Keane had a pretty impressive loan spell, albeit half a year. I think Craig Bellamy as well. If you had the prospect of Ben Doak for the full season, I don't see much wrong with it. I think to not do it just because he used to be here, is that kind of cutting your nose off to spite your face?
In the grand scheme of things, if you ran a professional operation, then it's the wrong thing. We don't run a professional operation, and the talk is that, and this is the biggest overarching rumour, that Celtic have finally recognised that they need to change the structure of how they go about their business, because, you know, what a surprise, the third transfer window in a row looks like it's going to hit the wall. So if we're in that situation and we need short-term fixes in that period of when you're getting your structure right, then of course any talent that is going to get us through the Champions League and make us better, make us win games or turn losses into draws and draws into wins in the Champions League has to be considered, if not, you know, actively pursued. So I'm okay with it. I don't care about the optics because I'm more worried about the underlying infrastructure in the club, and if they're sorting that, then the optics don't really matter. What matters to the team is winning games where we fix the underlying infrastructure.
If you can give Brendan Rodgers a more talented squad to work with, that's, to me, that's the most important thing. You talk about loan signings, some folks are dead against them. We don't know what's going to happen with him, but Adam Ida was a loan signing, and right now he's not a Celtic player. But what he did do, hold that thought, Miff, what he did do was come in and over a 5-6 month period played a pivotal role in helping us win the league and certainly winning the Scottish Cup. If Ben Doak comes in and helps Celtic qualify for the last 16 of this new Champions League or whatever, that's got to be fun and games for everybody.
Absolutely. I think the problem here is we're talking about it at a stage where there's just no activity, and therefore if you were fed up a loan signing as to appease you, you'd be a bit like, yeah. If that's getting done, backed up by business getting done and fixes put in place, then you would say, well, Doak comes back, he's need a platform to show his ability. Potentially that could be at Celtic. I don't have too much of an issue with it, but I take Paddy's point around it then creates that whole, you know, if we know straight away he's coming for a 18-month loan deal, then fine, great, it's fixed in, comes for 18 months, he's settled in the squad for 18 months. I mean, we have players come and go in a lesser time period than that, so come in, you know, you've got your platform, shows what you can do, and then when you're back down south you get your £30 million move or whatever, great, everybody wins for that. But the business has got to be done elsewhere to back up and bolster the squad. And if the rumour and conjecture is some as yet untested loan signings coming in, you know, that's so far away from what we need. It's unbelievable. The
likes of Doak and Bobby Clark or anyone of that kind of profile, I would see them as potentially Maverick-like additions to the squad, whereas there's some core fundamental problems to be dealt with. Left back, yes. Centre back, yes. Striker, yes. They're really important positions. Ben Doak's an exciting winger. Is that the priority? No, it's not. So if you got it, it might be a bonus, and I think we'd all be happy enough as a bonus, but there's a lot to be sorted before we get to bonus time, isn't there?
Well, there's some names, fairly persistent names, kind of kicking about, like Owen Beck and Lennon Miller and stuff like that. I suppose all we want to see, the biggest issue for me personally, yes, we absolutely need a left back. Goalkeeper was a priority and it's been sorted. We absolutely need a left back, but the mad centre half issue is the one for me.
Yeah,
it's just nuts.
It's going to cost you.
It's nuts.
And the thing is, and not to say there's nothing happening, but you're not even hearing a crumb of a centre
okay
half
with that.
rumour.
I'm okay with not hearing anything. I'd rather hear nothing and get somebody than hear loads of rumours and get nobody.
We need to get rid of the fiver hanging about. But
surely we could have at least let two go.
I bet who wants
They're trying.
Kobayashi and Lagerbielka would very likely move on.
And Navrotski's been told.
Again, we're in this world, aren't we, where this conversation could be very different in a fortnight's time, so there's a lot of if spots and maybes. The other couple of players, I'm not going to dwell too long. I don't generally like to spend too long on guys that are rumoured and potentially will never be here, but there is repeated rumours now of Jeffrey Schlupp, the 31-year-old Crystal Palace utility player. He's got a decent CV. He won the Premier League with Leicester in 2016. He then signed for Palace for 12 million in 2017. He's now in the final year of that deal. He's got over 250 Premier League appearances. Strong, powerful kind of player. And the thing that puzzles me, I don't think it'd be a bad sign at all. He's versatile on the left-hand side. Left back, left mid, centre mid seems to be his preferred positions. But it's a very un-Celtic-like kind of move. When does Celtic generally sign anyone of that age? There's no sell-on value by a guy like him. And I think as fans, we don't care, right? That, it seems to be the most important thing for the board. Yeah, I don't mind paying, but what's next?
Aye.
Forget what's next. Let's just sign him and let him benefit the team for 2-3 seasons. What do you think about a potential like that?
One of the main things, one of the problems Celtic's board have created is they've broken the link between selling a player for money and us using that money to improve the squad. That's gone. So why should we care if there's inherent sell-on value? You're not going to use it anyway.
Yeah.
Did you see the Frankie Boyle quote? Championship manager should have a trigger that a Peter Lawwell option where you need to generate 20 million sales to get a loan player in.
It's kind of like that. So I've seen a bit about the boy slip himself. Looks a big, strong Rodgers type player, and to have that versatility going into a really challenging Champions League environment, that's got to be good. So I mean, from the 12 million last year, his career, what are they talking about? 4 or 5, that kind of stuff.
As a fee?
Aye.
I've not seen anything on the fee, to be fair.
I think anything up to 4 or 5, I'd be happy to sign that off.
He'd be an excellent signing.
Yeah.
Do you know bits and bobs?
He'd been just if you're watching
Profile.
in the Premier League, he's been a fairly consistent performer over a number of years. If you're bringing in that level of quality that's played that number of games in the Premier League, and Palace had a fairly decent team to watch. So he's worked under Rodgers, Hodgson, Vieira, now Glasner. That's when you look at pedigree. He's obviously very tactically flexible. That's just screaming out the type of signing we would all like as fans. But I think you used the word un-Celtic-like, James. That's very or was it you, Tino?
It was me.
It's very un-Celtic-like. 250
Premier League appearances, Paddy. There's something to that, and we'll just need to see if that's the kind of move we make. It's a signing that would make a lot of sense in terms of his profile, though, in terms of the position he plays. There's a couple of guys we know will definitely not be getting now. We've covered Majowski, and I wouldn't have minded seeing Majowski at Celtic.
Yeah.
Young, potential, certainly knows how to score in Scotland, and I think if you give him opportunities, he'd score in Europe as well. For Celtic. He scored for Aberdeen, albeit it was Conference League. He would no doubt hit the target for Celtic given the chances we create, but we've missed the boat. Maybe we weren't even chasing that one at any point. And Scott McKenna, to a lesser extent, that was one that was linked around. He's going to Las Palmas in La Liga.
Yeah, I'm not too bothered about the McKenna one, to be honest. I'd agree with you on Majowski, but for me, I just don't see him taking Kyogo's shot. And I think he's not going to sit on the bench. He's at an age he just wants to play week in, week out, and I totally understand that as well.
Here's a question for you, Paddy. What's the pitch from Brendan Rodgers to any potential new number 9 we sign, Adam Ida or anyone else that's on Celtic's radar? What are you saying to that guy? Because Kyogo is undoubtedly our number 1 striker at this moment in time, but you can't really sign anybody and say, well, listen, we really want you here, but you're not going to play many games. How do you pitch that to a guy who might end up playing backup?
Well, you're kind of looking at Celtic as a whole. What's the important games? It's going to be these 8 Champions League fixtures, the cup games and the games against Rangers. Not so much the early cup games, but coming to the semi-finals and the final. That's what you would need to say, is that you're not always going to start these games. But we know it's a long season. We look at what George Giacomakis done for Celtic in his first season and effectively was a lifeline and is going and winning that league. So it's being able to say and try and sell that to Ida or whoever comes in is going to be second fiddle to Kyogo, that, listen, go and try and impress me. And if you get that opportunity and take that jersey, who's to say that it can't be yours as well? I've got my feelings about Kyogo. I think that, as I've said, I love him. I think a brilliant player, and I do think, though, this probably could be his last season with us as well. So that's another thing that you would say. There's every chance that it's your jersey from the beginning of next season as well. There's a lot to look at coming into that position at Celtic, and it's not to say as well that we don't change things tactically too, to maybe go with 2 strikers down the line. Whether Rodgers would do that, I don't know, but we don't know if he's going to be there all the time too. Football moves pretty quickly. I think he knows what he wants, and I think he knows how to sell the story, Brendan Rodgers, and I think I'm pretty sure we will see Adam Ida sign. I do think that will happen. But whether it's Majowski, whether it's someone else that should be knocking on the door of being a number 1 striker, I do think you can say, give me a season where you might have to be second fiddle, but you're going to get your time.
I think that's a really fair pitch if that's what we're putting to players. Majowski, I think, is 23 and Kyogo's 29. Will he be 30 this season? And that's just the way football works. The older guy nudges on and maybe plays less so, and the younger guy can come in. But in the interim, you would say a Majowski type, obviously he's gone, but someone in his position, you'd say, come in, you'll feature at times in the Champions League, you'll get starts like Adam Ida got starts, and then it's over to you. That's a chance to any player. Yeah. Actually, whether you're a potential new signing or Callum McGregor or Kyogo or Carter Vickers, nobody should be guaranteed starting every game. That's never the way it should work at any top club. And the pitch should be to any new signings, we know what you can do, you're a talent, we admire what you do, but come in and show us why you should be number one. And then there's a very real potential if they come in and hit the ground running, they become the new Kyogo and they're the starting striker. Miff, there's a move that, breaking news as such, you kind of picked up during the break there, but it was rumoured across the weekend that Bosun Lawal, he moves on, he's set to join Stoke City, and I think it's just gone through, a deal worth somewhere in excess of £2 million. It's an interesting one. I think it was one of our kind of close season shows where we were asking about guys that might come and do something for Celtic this season, and there was a lot of noise about Bosun Lawal given the amount of appearances he made and how well he was received at Fleetwood Town last season. But Brendan Rodgers fired a warning shot at him and Odin Thiago Holm just a few weeks ago during pre-season, challenged them to do more, challenged them to show exactly what they've got to offer, and one remains and one's now gone in the shape of Lawal. What do you think of how that's all played out?
Well, first reactions, I'm disappointed because I had high hopes based on the season that he'd had at Fleetwood, and I know people go, oh, it's Fleetwood Town, it's League One, but to produce the sort of numbers and performances he did in a struggling team, I think, suggests that he's got a bit about him. However, what I would then defer to off the back of that is that Rodgers has seen fit to put the challenge out and noted the reaction that he desired. So, as far as that goes, Rodgers is a man. He's a man that makes the decisions, and if he's not a desired reaction, then you need to back the manager in those instances.
What do you think of the fact that we're getting £2 million for a guy who's barely kicked a ball in the first team?
I think we signed him for 150 grand in the summer. The summer that Ange joined. So good business for the club, you could argue. But whether it is good business or not will become apparent in the next maybe 6 to 12 months to see how Lobel goes and develops. But the Stoke fans probably are thinking to themselves, why are we getting up to Celtic and signing players after Haxer's fairly anonymous loan spell there. So here's hoping he fares better than he did.
Yeah, so Lawal out, Paddy, how do you feel about it?
I can get behind that. No, I think for me, I was one of the ones that said he would have done something by now before he went on loan to Fleetwood last season. And yeah, I agree with you on that, Miff, that the numbers are pretty good, but would they finish 19th last year, Fleetwood?
They get relegated.
So I think that
the electoral owner get put in jail, and Bruni got ushered out the door.
Lee Johnson too.
Lee Johnson came and went.
Fair play to him for sticking the season out with the sounds of it. But no, I think that we would have kind of knew in that first year if he was going to really make an impact with Celtic. And what we speak on this show quite a lot about bringing players of quality in. I think by a certain point, in my opinion, and I don't think it's loan moves down to the lower levels of English football. It's going to get you up there, though.
One of the hard things I thought was put upon him was try to make him into a centre half that he absolutely was not. He was a bomb scare, but he was a big, athletic, physical centre midfielder who could get forward. Not saying that he had the quality to be at Celtic, but we probably wasted about 2 years of his development trying to make him a centre half.
And also the players going out on loan and playing a season has worked well for us. You think of Christie, you think of Aya, Scales even to a degree. But opportunities, the big thing in football, and the fact that Lawal and Holm were both given that sort of hurry up for Rodgers, and that Holm's been playing minutes in the first team since, after not featuring at all the last 4 or 5 months of the season. He's obviously seen the reaction that he desired for Odin Thiago Holm, and that's when you just go, the manager's seen them every day in training, all those cliches. He's obviously had the reaction he wanted for Holm.
We speak quite often about the structure at Celtic and maybe the lack of structure in certain key departments, and James, it's something that you're pretty passionate about, so much so that you've given up your season ticket, and that's been fairly well documented on this show. What do you think of the fact that as an operation, the academy has two objectives? One is to turn a coin, which is okay, right? We're in a commercial world. Celtic are a business at the end of the day. What I think is poor is when you spend all this time and all this energy and all this money developing young footballers who fritter off for nothing to the lower reaches of Scottish football.
Go and mention Ross County. Go, you do it every time.
Ross County, St Mirren, etc.
Michael Gandine.
But this year, this will be one of the, I suppose, the biggest sales out of the academy. If you look at him as an academy player, he's not. You could never have called him a first team player. $2 million for an academy player is good business. You'd far rather these guys would come through. And somebody pulled me up as such for, I'm saying, where's the next Callum McGregor, KT, James Forrest, all that stuff. I know it's not easy to produce talent of those three. They're three seriously talented players. But, as much as we all want the next guy to come through, whenever that may be, and there should be more, far more than what we've seen recently, the other side of it is it's okay to do decent business like Latwell at $2 million, but you need to be doing the other side as well, don't you?
I think, in typical Celtic fashion, we've got it upside down. I think we've pursued the money to cover the cost of the academy over developing the players for the first team, which should be the only priority. If you do that, the money will come anyway. And I think that's how most academies work. Well, I think actually Man City and things like that, they do set up an academy to generate revenue.
Yeah.
It's just upside down for me. Pursue developing players that become first team players who will make you money when they get sold on, but also the guys who don't quite make it, you'll have developed them to such a level that there'll be so much in demand that'll happen anyway. If you put the focus on the money, you end up with this lesser level of, that instead of 10, 25 million, you're getting 2 million early on in the stages. Yesterday
I was watching quadruple treble hero Connor Hazard concede 4 goals at Sheffield Wednesday. You've got Doak is the most obvious one, who was kind of next cab off the rank. Daniel Kelly's kind of disappeared.
I think Doak's an outlier because we did want to keep him. He was well developed
for under 21s, and he was excellent. He really stood out. He was clearly. I actually also thought Connor Barron was very good in the game that I watched him as well. But Ben Doak to me appeared a class above anybody else that was on the pitch that night. So it's interesting to see what the priorities are. It's, like you say, is the academy there actually to generate revenue?
To wash its face, if this costs $4 million a year, we need to sell $4 million a year, because I'm not paying a penny on it.
Genuinely,
I'm not investing money.
Pathway to the first team.
Again, it's another thing we just don't know about. I think there's certain things that Celtic have to keep secret and should keep secret. Not secret, that sounds cloak and dagger, but business wise, keep certain practices and ways of operating to yourself, and if that's ways that you gain a key advantage over others and different things business wise. But it's also okay to share your vision with the fans, and something like the academy is something that the fans can get on board with, because we all love to see one of your own coming through and all that stuff. And if the club say, yep, it costs us, I don't know, $8 million a year to run the academy or whatever the figure that was doing the rounds is, but we'll all offset that by selling a Boston label now and then, and every 2 years we'll produce a guy capable of the first team. Now, I know that's a wee bit crystal balling, but you can take it relatively far and say, we should produce X amount of talent. Celtic should have the pick of the bunch in terms of what's going on in Scotland at youth level. I did see something here, and I've got it in front of me now, that we lost out on St Johnstone's Caelan Hamill, a young guy, Scottish Youth International, that we're interested in, but he's decided to join at Arsenal next summer. It'll always be hard to compete with stuff like that, but at a certain age group, Celtic should be the biggest show in town for a lot of these young talents.
But then at the same token of that as well, Tino, we've got so many young players that are looking at Celtic and looking at Rangers and thinking, am I going to get to the starting 11? Do I not need to go and try and play at a Motherwell or St Johnstone, learn my trade there and really get that opportunity? I think Motherwell have been a prime example of that over the last 5 years. The amount of academy players that they rely on, not that they're going to just try and filter through.
They need them for their first team.
They need them. So I think that with Celtic, listen, there's plenty of players out there that will sign the dotted line, absolutely, and give it their best. But there's also that expectation that's on their shoulders at such a young age as well. And Celtic are a club that we can't hang about and wait for these young guys to be ready to come and play. We need them to hit the ground running. And that's where I think you look at the likes of Tierney, McGregor, James Forrest. They have hit the ground running when they've been given their opportunities. McGregor been a little bit slower, but I think he came in at the right time with probably the first time a lot of the pressure was off Celtic, and I would say the same with Kieran Tierney. In terms of the league, not a challenge. In terms of Rangers, they were given opportunities to bed into the squad, and they've really taken that. What I think you see a lot of the young guys do, and again, it's coming from agents, but it's also coming from their parents, the ones that have got their heads screwed on, saying, you're going to have a better chance going to one of these smaller teams, breaking through, and then by the time we start sniffing at them, they're signing for teams in Italy, signing for teams in England.
A lot of the conduct at grassroots level, or maybe not at grassroots, but once they go into academies, is, teams are buying players off each other at under 13, under 14 age, and that's where, like you mentioned, Paddy, the likes of Celtic and Rangers are very active. If they're seeing players on a regular basis perform, they're then going paying money to the likes of St Johnstone or Motherwell or Hearts or whoever to buy players off them, which makes it all the more bizarre that by the time they get to under 16, under 17, when, in theory, if they're the cream of the crop in the country, surely then they should be dropping into squads, playing the odd minutes here in a game that's maybe already won, that type of thing. You don't really see much of that. Pre-season's about the only time we see them. You have the odd instance of the likes of Daniel Kelly. When was the last time we had a striker? Jack Aitchison, the last striker we maybe brought through and played. Those types of things, ideally you want the club to be perfect, don't you? But those things are... I remember I was at the game when Simon Donnelly broke through. He came off the bench, scored a couple... No, in fact, he started, scored a couple of goals. These things are all part of the joy of supporting your club, is seeing players come through and go on and kick on, and it just feels like that's one wee area where the players are getting to a certain level, and then it just seems there's a stopper in there for some reason.
It's also just the quality of them as well, though. And listen, as I say, we might think that we've got the best players, but we don't always. I go back to the amount of youth players that we had to use when Ange came in. I think back to the game it's St Mirren where we drew Owen just Moffat before Christmas. Owen Moffat playing. The one guy that I think they've really got high hopes for that might kick on is Dane Kelly. Dane Murray. Yeah. I think that there's definitely something there. But we look at Stephen Welsh, good example as well. That somebody that's came through and we've thought, is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? Is he going to get there? He's just not at that level that we require.
Yeah, I think it's Stephen Welsh, maybe Tony Ralston's in the same bracket.
Yeah.
Very, very decent. Probably, in fact, almost definitely excelled at youth levels. But then there's a big step to take to becoming a top level player for Celtic.
I think Ralston's earned the right to be in the squad. I must say that.
I think so. And I almost stopped myself saying that. I think he's above Stephen Welsh, but the bottom line is none of the two of them are top draw. We'll get a wee bit sidetracked in that, but the last point on it, Dane Murray, I'm excited about. I've mentioned him a few times. He started for Queen's Park on Friday night, I believe. He's there for a loan, which I think is a good move. I do think this is maybe one for a different show. Celtic maybe need to be more particular about their partner clubs, who they loan players out to, whether it's the club in Austria last year, which seemed to benefit Matthew Anderson. Toby Oluwayemi was out there as well. Queen's Park is maybe a decent grounding, but is it good enough to prep you for life at Celtic? I don't know, and maybe Darren O'Day will play a part in that somewhere as well. But just the last point is that I appreciate that KT, Callum McGregor, James Forrester, fairly unique talents. They're exceptional talents who have been great for Celtic. You could call them maybe a once in a lifetime, once in a generation as such, but Kieran Tierney was the most recent to break through, and that was about 10 years ago, 2015-ish.
Aye.
So you'd like to think, we'll move on, but you'd like to think there would be at least another of that level coming through, and that's 8-9 years without that.
Harsh to compare him to Jamesy. I mean, you can't achieve the unachievable.
He's some boy. Listen, let's take another short break. When we come back, we'll bring you take 2 from our new Name the Goal Scorer feature. Welcome back, folks. We now return with take 2 of this week's Name the Goal Scorer. We started it last week, very straightforward. What we do is we'll play a clip from a notable goal in Celtic history. All you need to do is name the goal scorer, whose name will be beeped out from the commentary. Before we go ahead with this week's clip, so we'll reveal the answer from last week. If you can do the honours, it was a Champions League game, Celtic v Shakhtar Donetsk. Don't know if you can remember. So
yes,
that's one thing. Celtic Park, October 2022. The move was Jens to Haksabanovic, who plays it across goal to
Georgios Chakimakis.
Most folk got that, and I did make it easy for you, Miff, for week 1, but I'll give you the point for it. Paddy, your general thoughts on Gigi? He now finds himself at Cruz Azul in Mexico. He made the move from Atlanta in the MLS. Lots of folk, maintain Celtic should never have let him go. I think he wanted to go. He was at an aging stage in his career where he wanted to make the move, and that's okay, so be it. But he was good for us when he was here, wasn't he?
Yeah, fond memories. I think he just wanted to be the main man, and And rightly so, I can understand that. I think if we never had Kyogo and he was leading the line for maybe a couple of more seasons, I would have been more than happy with that. I think he was a really, really good player and so strong in the box as well, and gave us some great moments in a Celtic jersey. It's just a shame that there was someone better than him in the team as well at that time. But I wish him nothing but the best. Good player.
Very nice, James. You were a fan, weren't you?
Big fan. Yeah. I think the reason he was leaving was more age and stage than football. I think he was fairly late developer, got himself in a good position, top scorer in Holland, came across here, done really well, but then obviously had to start moving through the gears in terms of his weekly wage and stuff, because he maybe have 4 or 5 years left in his career at that point. So unfortunately he wanted more dough, and he came up against a big hairy Australian who said beat it, because that's the wrong guy to come up against. Juranovic's the same. So I was disappointed he had to go, but he had to go if he wanted to go and earn that money, and he did, and he's had his second move, and he'll get sign-on fees for all that. So best luck to him. Guys at that stage, they need to look after themselves and their families, so all the best to him.
Yeah, I think he's well thought of at Celtic Park, and rightfully so. So good luck to him out there in Mexico. Let's play the clip for this week's Name the Goal Scorer.
Celtic pushing up very quickly there, and very well.
Ugh.
How about that for a pass? How about that for a finish? That is for you, and that is Celtic 2, Rangers 0.
Good, 2 hands up from Miff and Paddy. James for a late third. Your old pal Ali McCoist on comms.
Goodness sake,
and I know you'd like that.
That's ridiculous.
tell you.
Get that
I've got
edited
to say.
out.
Oh,
I've
James
got
is
to say.
I just heard a universal frown when you all heard him. James, I'll let you come forward with the answer.
Yeah,
It is George
Nice.
Cadetti. So yeah, it's a big goal from Joe. It's one of the best goals I maintain. It's one of the best I've ever seen in any sort of Celtic Rangers fixture. It was Celtic Rangers 4-0 Scottish Premiership at Celtic Park, 3rd of September 2022. Have I given his name away there?
No, I don't think so.
I'm just thinking I've gone big on him there, but obviously people at home might be trying to give the answer.
The bit for me on that was the mention of the pass, because it's a brilliant pass.
Yeah. It's probably one of Riley's best. He's had a few.
Aye.
Yeah, brilliant goal. So what we'll do, as always, we'll beep out the answer.
And
I
Ali McCoist.
think I've said it a few times
I was
there.
going to say, you need to be put a paragraph.
I've got to say.
And we'll reveal the answer next week's show. We'll also share the clip on socials for anybody who wants to have a go there. To close out the show, some big news that came out the Celtic camp last week was that Callum McGregor announced his international retirement after 63 caps and 3 goals for Scotland. He made his debut in a friendly against the Netherlands in late 2017, so a 7-year career with the national team. Paddy, did you see that move coming, and what do you think of his decision?
I think after the injuries of last season, I wasn't really paying attention if we would do something like that this year or not, but it makes a lot of sense when I found out about it. He wants to give everything for this club. He already has in that sense, and I think that it's such a good thing for us. I've been on this show before talking about I've no love for international football at all, so I'm being very selfish and saying yes.
James, it was a disappointing campaign to say the least for Scotland, and I don't know how much that's factored into his decision. You know, teams and club and international levels can have bad times of it. Doesn't mean you need to call it a day. But do you think there's maybe a number of factors that's led to him making that decision?
I think it is just more body. I mean, I can't say it would be fun to play under Steve Clarke's brand of football, but, you know, McGregor's a Scotland fan that wants to play for his country and shows up. But I just think his body's starting to tell him it's time to take some time out. Because if you get McGregor in your squad, he typically starts and typically plays the whole game. And I was even watching the most recent tournament with him going, that boy just needs a break, you know, if we're to have him for the rest of the season.
I think he fought really hard to get back fit for the end of the Celtic season.
Yeah.
I think the tournament just came too soon. He really was needing a rest by that point because he'd burst it. He probably wasn't fit at the tournament, to be quite frank. That, along with, I think it's actually quite a selfless decision. I think he realises that the midfield in particular needs some young blood in there. Maybe somebody that's going to come in and, you know, somebody like Lewis Ferguson is an obvious example. It's going to come in and work with McTominay and McGinn, who are a bit younger.
Gilly Bilmore?
Aye, Gilly Bilmore, aye. So, you know, those guys, I think McGregor's looking round and going, well, there's a clear enough succession plan there. I'm not leaving MD in it. I think Clark would have him in the squad every time and probably starting every time, as you say, James. But you know, as with life, things move on, and I also think he's maybe had a bit of a shock because he get flogged by Rodgers, Lennon and Ange in all their tenures as Celtic manager. He played every time he was available. There was no real rests other than enforced ones when he was injured. Having that injury, fighting to get back, playing in the tournament in the summer, he's probably just had a look at everything and went, you know what, if I want to kind of prolong my club career, I just need to just concentrate on that.
Is there an element as well, and I find it quite baffling that we've not really heard much since the tournament about the future of Steve Clarke, and I know the SFA were very much like,
not heard a peep from Steve Clarke. Not that he's entitled or obliged to come out with any random press conference, but you think as a nation, Scotland were so well backed by the nation, least of all the folk that actually went out there in person. You think maybe just a wee update from the camp might have been healthy?
It was so toothless. You know, they played decent against Switzerland and Hungary, and
it was there for them.
And just it's a lack of courage coming from a collective courage to go
on a plate.
Aye.
Just to go back to Callum McGregor, he's seen his predecessor Bruni make a similar move. I think at 32 years of age, Callum McGregor turned 31 just in June there. And Paddy, I would say the move would be engineered mostly to prolong his Celtic career. How long do you think he can continue to be a mainstay of our midfield?
Easy another 2 or 3 seasons. 3 a push. I think you get 2 really good years out of him if he stays fit. And I think he will. I do think he will. I think this will be a big help for him, giving up on the international stage. Don't necessarily see him being a constant starter for us all the time as well. Although being like a first team player, of course, I think he's going to be super important for us in the Champions League. And I think that it's definitely a good decision from him. And I say, again, from a selfish side of things, it's good for Celtic. It's really good for Celtic that he said no.
There was talk on the radio, I think it was on Saturday, about the modern footballer, if you're an international player, it's a 12-month gig.
Aye.
There's little there, but I think back in the day, footballers used to get 6 weeks off and they would go and eat and drink as they pleased and come back seriously out of shape. Those days are gone. You know, it's Ronnie Dyler terms, isn't it? It's 24/7 athletes nowadays. And I think for a guy like Callum McGregor, who's done that for a number of years now, within a calendar for Celtic, which includes 50 plus games, give or take, every season, he must have just been asking where the break was coming from. Maybe mental fatigue as much as anything, James.
Absolutely.
You know, it takes its toll on both fronts. So you can fully understand why he's come to that decision. Brendan Rodgers was also quick to say, you know, people were saying, you know, how influential were you in that? He said, not really. He said, Callum approached me to talk about it, but I was more of a sounding board. He'd already made up his mind by that time, which sounds pretty fair. In terms of Callum McGregor, whatever the future may hold, and he's got an important job right now, James, on the park, but do you see a natural move into coaching and management at Celtic or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, he just exudes that kind of personality that will lend well to coaching, you know, but a bit like Bruni, you know, don't be doing it too early. But Bruni was getting, you know, doing his badges, and Rodgers said, bin that, get on the pitch and focus on that. And that's where the opportunity is for McGregor now, and for us as Celtic fans, is his pure focus. So there's no flights away to here, there and everywhere for daft friendlies or whatever it may be. It's pure focus on Celtic, and also getting that downtime to let myself breathe. So I think he will move into coaching. I think he'll be a very good coach. I don't think it should be happening any time soon.
There's also that element next season as well that we're going to be playing qualifiers again. And I think that
Even shorter summer.
aye,
Look, it's the consequences of our actions.
well, he can take it up with Peter. I think that no, another thing for me is he knows, like you say, we're looking at what Brown endured and what Brown brought to the table. I think he's now coming into that influential stage, the way Brown had that impact on him. Who's he going to look at to say, right, are you going to take this over from me? I think that's going to be an important factor for Celtic the next few seasons as well. Could it be Paulo Bernardo?
No.
Could it be?
Yes, it could be. He's an under-21 Portugal captain for a reason. They've not just given him that, you know, for chance. We've not seen fully that side of him at Celtic, but it's not to say that it can be the case. My last question to round this section off was going to be just that, Paddy. If it's not Callum McGregor as captain, whenever that may be, and hopefully it's a few years to come yet, but who is the natural successor in the Celtic dressing room right now? Bernardo's an interesting one. Carl Vickers generally takes the armband. Joe Hart used to take it. Kasper Schmeichel could be that guy again. And one guy I really like is Alistair Johnson. If he's here long term, I think he could be a captain as well. But any thoughts?
Greg Taylor.
Cool. James, I'll come to you for a serious answer.
I mean, one thing I really like about Taylor's his attitude. You know, I think he is a captain type player, and it's what we needed. I think he hit his ceiling, and that's fine. That can happen to any player. Johnson's probably a more long-term fit. If Taylor isn't going to sign his deal, you can't really plan for that. I think it's really difficult to say at the moment. Schmeichel, he's here in a short-term deal, so you need to kind of take that out. You're looking for somebody that's going to take it off McGregor, tail end the next season and run with it for 4, 5, 6 years. I think we're a bit too early, you know.
Yes.
The captain is maybe not in the room, you know.
I just like asking the hypotheticals because you love them, James. So Greg Taylor, Miff with James A as vice captain. We'll go for that.
I think he's put himself in a strong position with that shed. I think he's kind of put a different perspective on it.
More authority.
Just as a kind of slight aside but connected stuff, Bruni. So obviously, as you say, James, he's gone through a different route. You know, he could easily have slotted into the Celtic Academy and taken the 18s and done a bit of a jobs for the boys type thing, but you know, he's gone down south and he's moved around. He now finds himself at Ayr United and obviously came in towards the end of last campaign, which is pretty difficult. But he's got off to a really strong start this time around, 2 wins from 2, including a 5-0 win on Friday night against a highly rated Airdrie. A lot of noise about Airdrie and how well they were doing under, is it
Rhys McCabe?
I was going to say Rhys McCabe. Rhys McCabe, he was getting a lot of plaudits last season, got them at the playoffs, I think, and Bruni's hammered them on Friday. So I think it's a while away yet, but early suggestions that Bruni's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, there's a wee bit of what Ayr United are doing as well. They're taking a really professional business-like approach to things and appointing people in the right places commercially and from the football side of things, which does bring you know, the Bruni signing. So he's going to enjoy a good environment there. If he gets to a point where he, you know, imagine bringing Ayr up, you know, that'd be phenomenal kind of thing. That would have to be recognised, but I think there's at least one step between, say he gets Ayr in the SPFL, you know, Premiership. There's a step between there and Celtic, you know. And we need to see where that goes.
Miff, as our lower league correspondent, any thoughts on what Bruni's doing it? Yeah,
massive untapped potential at Ayr, given the volume of crowds that the juniors attract.
Yeah.
So getting a big name in to manage Ayr, obviously the Ayr fans have had to watch Kelly going, spending a lot of time in the SPL, and Ayr in their own right, relatively speaking, are a big club by Scottish football standards. You know, they take a fairly significant away support and can get good crowds at Somerset. So I wish Bruni nothing but the best. The nature of this part of the country is everything seems like an audition for the Celtic job, even if it is just him cutting his teeth in management, as we already alluded to. What he went through and with Fleetwood was a bit tough. He had a very good first season, found things more difficult the second season. So listen, I just wish him nothing but the best. He's been brilliant for us. It would be lovely to think that he would have the, you know, the ability and the character to go and come back and be Celtic manager or first team coach, but I just wish him every success where he is just now, and that's something for further down the line. I think in the meantime we just need to sign some body players.
You should have mentioned. I think for Bruni, he's taken a very interesting route, Paddy. He could easily have taken higher profile jobs, and there was jobs that came around here. The Hibs job was mentioned and others, and I think he would have very probably got those jobs had he gone for them. I think he's been well advised. I'm pretty sure Brendan Rodgers won't be far away for advice when it comes to the jobs he's taken. And to go down to Fleetwood, who at the time were in the third tier of English football, now in the fourth, aren't they? That's good because he can do his management apprenticeship away from the glare, you know, away from the spotlight. And even, you know, in a similar vein, he's doing so at Ayr United, a bit under the radar, you know, not always in the telly, and, you know, won't see or hear much about him. And he can make the mistakes that you need to make at that level, and then who knows what the future will hold. Anyway, we'll keep a close eye on that one and see where it goes.
Also, a strong message to send that you were bold through choice.
That's exactly what happened. Paddy, I'll come to you for any additional insight on top of that as we wrap up the week.
Thank you. About the boldness or Celtic in general?
All of the above.
All of the above. I think, listen, we don't want to take the shine off what's been two really, really strong performances from Celtic. I think, as I said, watching them yesterday, I thought that we took the foot off the gas after the second goal, just kind of enjoyed possession. And then second half, I think Rodgers basically told them to up it again. A bit more conviction would have been great. I think we could have easily took another three or four goals off Hibs yesterday. They're in a bad place at the moment. But that's a really, really strong start from us, and I think that it bodes well for the team. We do have to look over our shoulder in terms of if we do get that injury or we do lose that player, who's ready to step up and come into those positions. There's a lot for us to see. We want to see what Bernardo's going to bring. We also want to see what Odin Thiago Holm's going to bring this time round as well. Do we need to get another midfielder into bolster again? We know what we need at the back. I think it's just crying out. We know what we need at the back, and I think Greg Taylor needs supported. I'm not necessarily saying that Greg Taylor needs replaced. I think there needs to be 2 left backs the way we've got 2 right backs.
Just on Matt O'Reilly and the potential for replacing him, Rodgers was asked specifically about that, and would there be a ready-made replacement if O'Reilly makes a move? And he says you can't replace that quality. No. Matt O'Reilly has become the Matt O'Reilly that we now know. Celtic cannot sign that replacement. All we can do is sign a talented alternative who may become that, and we'll just need to see. And that's always going to be the challenge when guys flourish in the way that O'Reilly has done. James, your own final comments for the week.
First, before I forget, I have to give a shout out to Tony C, friend of yours and mine, that I caught having a sneaky pint outside the Grove today. So I said give Tony a wee shout.
Fantastic quality venue.
And a wee bit of sun as well. So
a Monday pint and all.
I was going to say, is Tony in the Monday club?
Fair play.
Fantastic.
Fair play.
So final thoughts, just invest in Harris fencing for the 1st of September. Get it up at Celtic Park, make your money.
I think the boysies will come good, James. We'll need to see. Miff, last word as always goes to you.
Well, it remains to be seen. We're getting quite close to the wire. I'm still hopeful. This can't be it. It can't be. So yes, let's see what the week brings. Yeah. Per came back.
Per came back on the scene.
Peter's just text saying that. Then how come it is it?
18 days to go, lads, no worries. That wraps things up on this latest Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to James, Miff and Paddy, and thanks to you for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with the countdown to kick-off ahead of Sunday's Premier Sports Cup game with Hibs. That's a 3 p.m. kick-off at Celtic Park. And remember to check out the celticexchange.supercast.com to show your support to the Celtic Exchange this season. But in the meantime, as always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.